Most shark species, really all of them, are incredibly aware animals. They're never gonna, choose a person and think that that's his fantastic meal, especially when they do have a buffet sitting right in front of them.
Hey, folks. Welcome back to EarthSky. I am David Adalian, and today we have a fantastic recorded interview for you. We're going to Hawaii, the warm and shark-infested waters off of the coast of that beautiful state. In 2024, there was a strange feast. A mixed group of shark species were peacefully sharing a bounty, and no one had seen that before. Joining us today to tell us about the Happy Seagoing Buffet is Olivia Miller. She's a marine naturalist and was on scene and was one of the crew who jumped into the water to see what was going on. So why don't we take a look at that? Hi, Olivia. Welcome to Earth Sky. And I had it all prepared. Aloha I como me. For those of you who don't speak Hawaiian, that's welcome and come on in. Anyway, you tell us who you are and tell us what was going on that day. Tell us about this exciting 3-hour tour. You started out from a tropic port, a tiny ship, I assume.
Always starts that way. Yeah, I'm Olivia
Right.
Miller. I work for a whale watching company called Hawaiian Adventures Kona, and we were just out on a routine whale watch. Seen a lot of amazing wildlife that day already, and ended up doing a little bit of a deeper loop, just checking out some different water when we spotted something a little bit out of the ordinary. You don't often see big white things floating around out in the ocean, and usually when you do, unfortunately, they're trash. So we headed in that direction, just figured we'd pick it up if it was something we could manage. And then actually we ended up smelling this lovely big white lump that you can see popping up on the screen here before we got close enough to see. And only one thing smells that way out on the water, and that would be some kind of dead animal, in this case, a dead whale.
Okay. And so it was a blubber island floating along out there. And what did you find surrounding this thing? Let's see. We've got this. This is you. This is when you decided to jump into the water like every sane person does when they see sharks feeding.
Yeah.
What did you see?
We noticed some sharks were feeding. We had a couple different shark species that were there throughout the entire encounter, but when we initially arrived on the scene, it was just oceanic white-tip sharks, which are critically endangered species. We're really fortunate to have them here in Hawaii. It was very cool to be seeing them feeding in a natural way on this big piece of blubber. And then down the scene, or later on in the day, several tiger sharks came to join, which is what you're seeing in the video right now. So that's the massive chunk of blubber there, a very, very degraded dead whale, and some large predators feeding on the scene.
I like the way he's kind of looking like, okay, diver, what are you going to do? Are you coming over here? No, we're fine. I'm going back to feed. Okay, so this is we're told it's unusual to see them peacefully feeding together, but don't all scavengers come and feed on something? I mean, this is a big buffet. I guess we want to know why the sharks didn't turn on each other, and why didn't they turn on you? Why didn't they decide that you were a tasty treat?
Yeah, most shark species, really all of them, are incredibly aware animals. They're never gonna, choose a person and think that that's his fantastic meal, especially when they do have a buffet sitting right in front of them. That is gonna be a priority food source for them. It's really a feast. They're just as excited to see a big chunk of dead whale out there as we are as divers getting to observe the scene. In terms of turning on each other, there was definitely a pretty clear hierarchy established between the sharks. So the tiger sharks, they were definitely in charge of the scene, spending a bit more time higher in the water column and spending more time feeding directly on that carcass. Whereas the oceanic whitetips, a couple of them were feeding directly on it, but most of them were spending a bit more time lower down. Anytime one of the larger animals would rip into that, little shreds would kind of fall off, and then the sharks would oftentimes clean up the little pieces below the smaller shark species. So everyone kind of had their space in the ranks there, including us divers, which was just staying out of the way and observing. But yeah, there was just enough food to go around for all the sharks, so they were very excited to be there as well.
Yeah, this reminds me of the scene, not from the movie Jaws, from the, I think this is the one, from the book, Peter Benchley's book, where a tiger shark has its belly opened up and they're feeding it and the food is just dropping out and it's feeding the same food over and over again. There we go. This is what reminded me of that. But there is no frenzy. That sounds like that's overrated. That doesn't really happen, does it? These guys are, as you say, thoughtful animals. They've got more brains than we give them credit for, don't they?
They definitely do. They're very aware. That video was an instance of a tiger shark eating so much and gorging itself to the point where it was actually regurgitating some of that food. Like it ate more than it could handle in that moment. When you get an opportunity like this for them, it's like it is truly a buffet. It's all the food that they could hope for and definitely more than they can handle. But because these guys don't often know when their next meal is going to be, they will eat until they know they can't eat anymore. But that's interesting bringing up Peter Benchley. He became a massive advocate for shark conservation after realizing what he kind of unintentionally did to the industry and did to everyone's perception of sharks with Jaws.
Right.
So it's cool to see him flip and turn around. And this is another great show of you can spend an ample amount of time in the water. Overall, I think all of us who were there for around 8 hours in the water with these sharks. And none of us had moments when we were the prey rather than that carcass that was there for them.
So I think it's probably safe to say that if you respect the shark's boundaries and don't go into their feeding grounds at certain times, that you said something that caught my interest is that they don't know this is an opportunity for them that doesn't pass every day. And so they're feeding massively, stuffing themselves. And I think we've all been that way at the buffet once or twice, present company excluded, of course. But anyway, how long would this meal carry an adult tiger or white tip shark?
Honestly, it's going to depend on how much each individual ate. And we were there for such a small snippet of time. So there was actually a photo sent to me of a larger chunk of a whale carcass about 2 weeks prior. And we are assuming, just because this scene is quite rare, that it was the same one that circled back in the currents 2 weeks later. So it's really going to depend on how much each shark spent time feeding. And if they were one of those smaller oceanic white-tip sharks lower in the water column, not directly getting to feed, they obviously aren't going to be sustained as much as the tiger sharks that were, gorging themselves so much that they were regurgitating some of it. But it'll be a really great meal for them and a great source of nutrients for a good amount of time.
So that sort of teaches us about the pecking order for sharks and the hierarchy of how they feed. As you said, the more dominant animals were up right at the island of blubber at the source, while others had to sit back and kind of wait. Have you experienced things like this before? Is this kind of activity recorded elsewhere, or are we onto something?
Yeah, dominance in the water column is something that has been established with most shark species pretty well, whether it's in feeding situations like this or if it's people diving with them. Sometimes if you get into a scene with a lot of sharks or different species that, hold up to each other differently, you can see which ones are going to be higher in the water column and which ones are going to spend more time lower down just based on that dominance.
Right. And so because we had two different species mixing together, that hadn't been seen before. So I assume we're going to learn something about the intermixing of these sharks. These are vastly different species. Don't they normally occupy different habitats?
Yeah, that's what was so incredibly novel about this encounter. The oceanic white-tip is exactly that. They're an oceanic species. They spend most of their time out in water that is incredibly deep. When we first found this carcass, it was in about 9,000 feet deep of water. And the tiger sharks are kind of the opposite. They spend most of their time along the coastline and shallower waters. They're considered to be mostly a coastal shark. Both of them, of course, move around a lot. And if there is a massive buffet somewhere and they get a scent of that, no matter where they are, they're probably going to come check out that option, which for these sharks, it worked out very well for them that day. But because these guys occupy such different areas of the water column or just water depth in general, there aren't that many places in the world where you can have 9,000 feet of water only a couple miles from shore like you can have here in Kona on the Big Island. And that just created the opportunity for these sharks to hang out together.
Yeah, some very deep water between our west coast and your island chain. Very deep and cold. Okay, so now that you've seen this and you know which current it was floating, and this was I believe you called it a stochastic event, meaning it just pops up and we can't predict it. Will you be looking anyway? Will you be out there eagerly looking for more of this to happen so you can go and jump in the water?
Yeah, always. I mean, all of us who love sharks, we also love whales. We love everything in the ocean, but we're also equally excited to find a dead whale as we are a living one because we get to see really cool events like this. So we're always on the lookout for any kind of large carcass that might allow us to observe a natural feeding event because it's just not something we get to see very often, especially here in Hawaii.
Yeah, and because of the deep water, because of the steep sides of the island themselves, it just drops off very swiftly. So, and if it does hit, it's going to roll. And it's going to get consumed quickly, isn't it? Because whales provide essentially a unique ecosystem at the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah.
Olivia, this was great. I love sharks. I think sharks are cool now. I think they're even cooler. And the next time I am on the Big Island, maybe I'll come and whale watch with you. If you'll have me. What is the name of your whale watching company? Where can people find that if they want to come out and get in the water with you guys?
We are called Hawaiian Adventures Kona. We're all topside whale watching, but you never know what you're going to come across. Sometimes it's something novel like a whale carcass.
My last whale watching tour turned into a free dive, so that was cool.
Yeah.
You never know what's going to happen. Stranger things happen at sea, right? Mm-hmm. Hey, Olivia, thank you so much for being here. Take care of yourself, okay? Be careful out there. Those sharks won't hurt you, but you never know. Anyway, aloha a hui ho. You go carefully, okay? We'll see you next. And we'll see you folks next time as well. Wasn't that cool? Sharks are so cool. Anyway, we have some big exoplanet news this morning. We had it this morning, and we're going to have the reporting on it right now. Go check it out on our website, earthsky.org. The James Webb Space Telescope just discovered a Saturn-sized exoplanet, and we're going to get some video together for that for you on that. So stay tuned. We'll be back here today with that. And we're here every day at 17:15 Universal Time. And tomorrow we're going to be having a sci-fi adventure. We're going to be talking about Dyson spheres. Dyson spheres are artificial constructs that surround entire suns. We'll see you back tomorrow for that. One Earth, one sky, EarthSky.